Welcome back to another one, guys. We're installing some AEM gauges today. What's going on, You have to interrupt. Where did you come from? You know, the other room. Yeah, I'm just walking. Yeah, I actually they can't tell everyone what they want to hear. Here we are, everyone. Back out in the garage for another one. We're throwing in the gauges that we were just talking about. So I've got everything set up on the bench behind me, so we're about to run through all that in a second. But, there's more. So I got more camera equipment on the way. I ordered that light that I was talking about. I ordered 2 of them to be specific, so that way the lighting inside will be a lot better like it is out here. I have these nice LED shop lights out here, so it really makes my face look so bright. So we have some more of these coming for inside the house. I got a GoPro Hero 7 on the way also, so that way we can get some cool dual feature camera goodies stuff. And then I got a new camera bag just because I keep getting so much more stuff. I needed a bigger one, so I'm excited to get those. But let's jump into the gauge install for now. Bam! Look at this. Everything laid out so beautifully. Focus. Look at this. Everything is so beautifully laid out. So tools that we're gonna need. I have a what's this? Half inch spanner ratchet guy. I don't know what you guys call them. Half-inch ratchet, a 24mm socket, a 10, a 13, some wire crimps, some dikes, a small screwdriver, some thread tape, heat shrink, solder, zip ties, and then an Attribution that I bought. Some people don't like using Attributions. I do because I don't want to cut or splice into main wiring harnesses. Then also a soldering iron up here. Over here we have the gauge cluster, the dual SMY one, the boost gauge and the Afr gauge. So with the boost gauge, you get the gauge itself, you get a gauge face. All the wiring, you get a little bit of boost line also from AEM, and then they send the sensor that you need. For the Afr gauge, they give you the O2 sensor. If you don't have a bung in your downpipe, they send you a bung that you can use. So that helps. The gauge itself and a second wiring harness that we'll end up installing. So we're just going to jump straight into it and move into the car. Alright, so to jump right into it, guys, you have these 2 screw heads up there at the top. There's 2 of them, and that's it. Aside from that, the shroud is just clipped in. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop the steering wheel down all the way, take these 2 screws out and get this old bezel out, and then we'll start setting up the new stuff. Bam, and like that we have the old one out and the new one here. So with the old one, as you can see, it is the exact same as the SMY, but we have that spot for those 2 gauge pods. So with this, we're going to set it down in the stockpile of car parts. Look at that, dude. This box just gets bigger and bigger every week, I swear. All of that is just all factory STI parts. We got fog lights, fuel lines, steering wheels, interior bits, air line. If anyone needs anything, I might have it if you're ever low on parts and you need something, so let me know. Anyways, jumping back over to this guy, we're going to get this guy set up now and start getting some of this wiring put in place. So I'm going to get the camera set up and we'll start digging into this. Alright, so before we even start getting the gauges set up, we're going to go ahead and grab the adapters and the sensors from AEM and get these guys set up here. So we have a T, the sensor itself, a rubber band, which we'll need later, and then a nipple. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up putting the nipple on here, but first we want to throw some thread tape on here just to make sure we have a good seal and nothing's going to leak out of there. Alright, this is where we're going to take that 13mm and the 24mm. We're going to stick that sensor down in there and then tighten this guy down. Wha-bam! Like that. Our sensor's ready. So we can set that guy aside and start jumping into the wiring portion of this. So what we're going to want to do is grab the wiring for both the boost gauge and the Afr gauge, get these little ties off. The only wires that I'm going to be using are going to be black and red. Power ground, I don't need signal or illumination on these, so set those 2 aside. So this blue and white, I'm just going to snip. Blue and white, snip. And then we're going to remove some of this coating on the outside of these red and black wires. Now that we've got the coatings removed on these, what we're going to go ahead and do is get these twisted together so that way they can get ready to be soldered. So we've got our wires ready to be soldered. So let's jump into this. Alright, so while our soldering iron is heating up, we're going to go ahead and get our adafuse ready. So what we're going to want to do is grab a little bit of that heat shrink that we have set aside and cut off maybe half an inch. And we're going to go ahead and slide that over the two red wires so that they're hanging out like so with our heat shrink down here. Next, I don't like these quick joint connectors or whatever you want to call them, so I'm going to cut it off. I don't want to use it. And we're going to go ahead and strip this other red wire. And just like that, and then we're going to get that twisted over our power side. So now we have our power from our boost gauge, AFR gauge, going into this adafuse, which we're going to end up putting into the glove box. One more thing that I'm going to do to get ready then is grab a ring terminal. This is going to be our ground. So grab the ring terminal. I'm going to cut it a little bit just to open it up so it's more of a C shape like that with a little indent in it. So grab a little bit more heat shrink, put it over the ground side, which is the black wires, and slide that guy down also. So now that our soldering iron has warmed up enough, and you can tell it's heated up enough when you can touch a little bit of solder on it, and you see some smoke like that. So what you want to do to solder is put the solder on the wires you want to do, heat it up, and it'll melt it on there. I'm gonna go ahead and get this guy unplugged, get the lights plugged back in so we have a little bit better lighting, and I'll show you what the solders look like now. Now that we've got our lighting back, we can go ahead and see what these solders look like. So as you can see going around it, that material, these are fused together now, they're not going anywhere. Same with these two black wires, we have our solder going all the way around this wire. So now what we wanna do is take that heat shrink, slide it up on, and then heat this guy up. So I'm just using a standard Bic. You can use whatever you have laying around, but now we've got the power side taken care of, let's take care of this ground side. So we're going to go ahead and grab that ring terminal that we had earlier, go ahead and slide it into the ground, grab your wire snips and crimp this guy together. Slide that heat shrink up and over, and once it's up and over, go ahead and heat it up. Sweet. And there we have our electrical connections done. We've got power, ground. Now we're ready to get this stuff all plugged into the bezel and get getting gauges ran. We're going to run our big AFR gauge harness next. So what we're going to want to do is go over to the passenger side of the car and I'll show you where to run this through. Alright, so this is the passenger side footwell of the car. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the small white end of the plug and I'll show you where to run this through. In the footwell itself, you'll see a small passage right up here that goes over to the driver's side. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up taking that white end of the cable and feeding it up through here. So I'm going to set the camera up on the driver's side of the car so that way you can kind of see it poke out as I'm feeding it through. Bam, and there it is, popping out. So we can go ahead and pull out some of the slack. And with that, we've got our first gauge wire ran through the back side of everything else. So now we're going to jump back over to the bench and start getting these other wires ready to go. Alright, so now we're ready to throw the air-fuel ratio sensor in. So I'm going right down there on that bung on my downpipe. I need to move my air oil separator out of the way. That's a 19mm on my bung, which most of them are. So we're going to get that out, get this guy moved. We need to move this because there's a grommet behind that goes through the firewall, and that's where we're going to run our wires. So I'm going to get this guy moved, get that bung down there out, and get this guy in. Alright, so as you can see, we just got our O2 sensor into the downpipe. Here's the wire for it. Then if you look right back there behind my air oil separator, you see a grommet in the firewall. That goes to the footwell of the passenger side where we have the other end of this guy at. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop out that grommet, shove that guy down in there, and then get those two connected, and that'll be the wiring for the sensor wiring for our air fuel ratio gauge. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get that guy popped out. I'll show you what I use to do it. There's a couple different methods of doing it, but I'll show you how to get that guy out. All right, so I'm gonna be using this pop clip removal tool to get that guy out. I'm pretty much just gonna wedge this between the firewall and the grommet itself and start prying it out. And then I can grab that main harness down there and give it a little bit of a yank, and that'll get it out of the grooves in there. Down there we've got it popped out a little bit, and then you can see the wire up there going through the firewall. So I cut a slit in mine using a razor blade. That way I can run that wire through and push the grommet back in, but right now our sensor wire is down through the firewall on the other side of the car. So with that in there, I'm gonna push that grommet back up in here, get the aero separator mounted back up, and then get my intercooler piping back on, and then we will run the sensor for the boost gauge. Just to show you guys where that sensor comes out of, so as you can see down here, there's your oh my gosh, there's your blower fan, and there's the connector. So it's gonna come out right against the firewall. All you gotta do is pull it down a little bit. Make sure you connect the end that we started with, that we pushed through the backside earlier. So get those plugged in, get them zip tied up here somewhere out of the way. If you have one of these panels, throw it back on. This is an aftermarket one, just to keep the fan blower motor from not being extremely loud. So get that zip tied up, and then I'm gonna get my engine bay thrown back together, and we'll jump over to the boost gauge. All right, so we've got the engine bay put back together, intercooler piping's back in. There's our sensor right down there in the down pipe. It runs back up along the firewall and then out through that grommet, and then down to where I just showed you where we plugged it in. Now it's time to do the boost gauge, and I'm gonna have it come out right over here so it's really clean. There's not a whole bunch of wires running around everywhere. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jack up this side, pull this wheel off, take that fender liner out, and there's a grommet up in that fender liner that we're gonna end up using. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this jacked up a little bit and get that thrown in there. Bam, real well. So, oh, am I missing part of my fender liner? Is there part of a fender liner that's supposed to go here? Or am I just nuts? Like, I thought some fender liner was here, but I guess not. Anyways, oh, that's not good. I'm rubbing through. Ugh, that's not good. So I'm gonna go ahead and take off this fender liner so I can get up into the wheel well area, and that's where I'm gonna be running all of my harnesses. Oh, I'm missing a clip right there. I need to fix that. So I'm gonna get in here and start taking this guy out. All right. So I just ran through and I ran the boost wire. You wouldn't have been able to see anything because I was up in that fender well. But now since I got it, I can show you. So as you can see right here, there's a grommet behind the fender. This is where my airlines are ran, my air suspension is ran, and now my little boost gauge. So I have a cut that I put in that, and then it runs up underneath of this fender liner, going up, coming out behind the battery tray here, and then wrapping around right here. So we have our boost gauge sensor here, and then inside the car, I'll show you what it looks like. I'm gonna grab the flashlight. So inside the car, we just have a rat's nest of wires right now that we're gonna end up cleaning up, but they all run up and to the left through that fender well, so you're not gonna see any of these wires, which is my end goal here, because I hate seeing wiring. So I'm gonna get that fender liner put back in, get the wheel on, and then jack the car down, and we'll keep running through wires. Bam, and there we have our sensor ran up here, or our sensor wire. Here's our sensor itself, and then there's our boost line. I just call it boost line, but it's not. I'm gonna have to, come on, focus. I'm gonna have to drill that out a little bit bigger because the sensor, it doesn't fit on the sensor, which is ridiculous. So I'm gonna get this drilled up a little bit with a small drill bit, just hand turn it in there just to get it big enough to fit over the sensor. Alright, so we went ahead, we connected up the sensor to the signal wire, and then now we're going to be tapping into the nipple right down, let me focus in on it, right down here, right where my finger is. It's a little difficult to see, but it's that nipple right there. So we're going to tap into that guy. It's on the driver's side of the intake manifold underneath that fuel pressure vacuum line. So it's a small little nipple down there. We'll pull it off, get that vacuum line put on there, and then zip tie up those wires. Excess zip tie cut off. Wow, alright, well that's it. We're done under here. We've got everything ran and routed, so we don't need to push anything else around anywhere else. So with that, let's jump back in the car. We'll do power and ground, and then we can just start plugging everything in and pretty much be done at that point. Bam. All right, so if you're looking at your fuse panel, you're gonna wanna grab your Attifuse that we, you're gonna wanna grab your Attifuse that we had earlier. You're gonna wanna go bottom left, second one up, and that's going to be your cigarette lighter. So as soon as you turn the car on, that's always on. So before we even plug this in, I'm running a 15 and a 10 amp fuse in this guy, so a blue one and a red one. You just gotta push them in just like that and get that plugged right in there. So this other one that you might be looking at, this one's for my bags, which is conveniently tucked up out of the way like I like it. And then you see this screw right over here that holds the trunk latch. That's what I'm going to be using as my ground. Actually, I'm going to be using this other one up here as my ground. So it connects to the chassis. We're going to slide that guy up in there and loosen that, pull it out just a little bit. That's why we cut this, that way so we could just slide it in without having to take it all the way out. I found it's really difficult in the past to take these out, and this is a good ground that it'll still work. So I'm gonna grab a 10mm, start pulling that out, and then we're gonna get this guy in. We're gonna grab the gauges, plug them in, and make sure that they power up. All right, so with the gauge there, let's go ahead and hit power. Oh boy, there's air fuel ratio's got power and boost has power. So with that, we know that we have a good power, we have a good ground. We're going to get these unplugged and start running the wires to get these set up in the car. All right, my Subaru friends. So is this locked in? It is. Let me unlock that. So all we've done so far is we got the gauges slid into the pods and the wires ran through the back side of them, and the two screws holding the pod up into the top is. We're not done yet though. So as you can see, when we go to power up the car, our gauges turn on. Just like everything else. So, and then when we turn the car off, they turn off. So, hold up. You can keep beeping if I don't do this. We're not done yet though. So, let me get out of here. We still have some wires down here. We have one wire left, and that one wire is the excess for the AFR gauge. But as you can see here, so right here is where our boost gauge wiring comes down. It comes down behind the little plastic cloud sheathing thing, whatever there. It's bundled up here, and then it Y's off. That Y goes over to the air fuel ratio gauge, and that's the power for the air fuel ratio gauge. And then we've got the rest of our wires nicely bundled up right back here. They're out of the way. You're not going to be kicking them. I'm going to tuck them up and zip them. I'm going to tuck these guys up and zip tie them up here to this bracket, and then they'll be completely up out of the way. So what I need to do now is I'm going to get that zip tied up. I'm going to get that slack pulled through to the other side, so that way we don't have a poop load of wires over here. And then we're going to get this reassembled. So voila, there we have it, my Subaru friends. The cleanest gauge install you could possibly do. No wires down there, you can see, no wires down there. Everything's ran appropriately. The gauges themselves came out great. Let's do a startup just to make sure it works. Good on air fuel ratio. Good on boost. Look at that. Gucci. Alright guys, well that's the gauges. We got gauges. Easy to do, ain't too bad. So the gauges are in. If anyone has any questions on how I installed those and you didn't fully get it through the video, by all means ask. And the way I ran the boost gauge, you don't have to run. You can run it the same way that we ran the AFR gauge up through the passenger side firewall. I just wanted it to be a little cleaner than I did last time. So we went through the driver's side fender, up through, and into the engine bay. I like it. I think it came out a lot cleaner than if I would have ran it up through the other way. But you do you. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, I appreciate you guys swinging by. As always. If you haven't already, subscribe to the page. If this video helped you, smash that subscribe button if you're into it. Or not the subscribe button, the like button. Smash the like button if the video helped you at all. If not, don't. Fine. I appreciate it if you do though. So, anyways, thanks for swinging by, guys.